What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to A Therapeutic Edge. It is very nice to have you here. I have something on the table that, as I mentioned on the first video on Monday, this is just something I've added to the collection. These are very hard to find, although the newer drop point version is out there. This is an older Spartan Pallas, P-A-L-L-A-S, Pallas? Pallas? I'm going to go with Pallas. It is the second Spartan that I have had. Now, I had a Harsey, and I loved it, but I didn't love it. And so I had it for a while, and then it moved on, and it brought something very new and cool into the collection when it left. These have always interested me. I like a button lock. I mean, who doesn't, right? But when a buddy of mine happened to have the Tanto version sitting around, oh, that is filthy. That's what happens when you carry these things. I said, okay, let's do that. And so I did. I don't know what I got on the blade here. This is the older model. This is S35VN. Everything else is basically the same. They say it's on alpha bearings, whatever that means. It is 6061 titanium on the handles, and of course, that fantastic button lock. Thumb studs work beautifully, and it is very comfortable in hand. Are you guys gonna guess in advance what I feel? I don't love this pocket clip. I don't need this much knife sticking out of my pocket under any circumstances, but there we are. Maybe somebody makes a deep carry that would work. I'm gonna look into that. It's got a nice little lanyard spot on it. I do like the Spartan design aesthetic, and the Tanto in particular on this model is just really tough looking. I mean, I've never heard anything about Spartan that tells me they aren't tough in general. This one's just got a particularly aggressive look to it, and I like that quite a bit. Their S35 is, by all accounts, done extremely well. It's got just a little tiny bit of belly up here on the Tanto, so you can, if you wanted belly for cut, it's got a nice long flat on this side. It's just a really nice knife. And it sounds good, doesn't it? It does. Let's get some basic specs out of the way, and then we'll move on to some size comparisons. It's a big boy. You are looking at 3.5 inches of cutting on about 3 3/4 of that S35VN. The grip area from behind that flipper tab is big. You get a full 4.5 inches. So, I mean, there's knife sticking out way back here, right? Again, because of the way this is shaped, it is stupid comfortable. You've got some jimping milled into the aluminum back here. And of course, it's got these lines, which both look cool and give a little bit of grip, because as you know, if you've ever had a ProTech, flat aluminum can be very, very slippery. It's got a cool pivot. I have not taken this apart yet. I'm not a huge take-apart button lock guy, because they can be kind of finicky on the return. The design is very, very straightforward. It's got these lovely barrel spacers back here, which are very cool looking, by the way. In short, this is, well, to me, it is a much better looking knife than the Harsey was, and just really well done. It is, of course, fully made in the USA. They're very proud of that, and they should be. That also means that these aren't particularly inexpensive, although, whereas a Harsey starts at about $450, $425, these are $285, $290, which is, not inexpensive, but not crazy either. Knife from tip to tail, you are looking at 8 3/4 inches, which is a really nice size. The closed length is coming in at 5 1/8. Now, the pocket profile that's a big knife, right? I want to point out, the flipper has no jimping, but it also has no hard edges at all, and it never misses. So it's really nicely done. That means that even though it is in your pocket with other things, there's nothing sharp here to dig into your phone or whatever else you've got in your pocket. Closed profile, let's take a look. We are looking at a little over 1.5 inches, because right through here at the thickest. It's not bad. I mean, for a knife this big, it's not bad. I really like this thing. It makes me happy. I did mention the pocket clip is not my favorite thing in the world. I'll grab this piece of paper. And yeah, I mean, that is a lot of knife. Now, I can hear you out there, the sort of tactical knife carriers. You need that much knife to get it out of your pocket with gloves. Look, fine. You're not wrong. That's exactly why a lot of knife designers leave a lot of knife sticking out of the pocket. But that's not my reality. So that's kind of a bummer. By way of example, I've got the Bad Monkey here. Emerson Wave, M4 Blade, equally tactical, whatever. And you get considerably less knife sticking out of the pocket. So it doesn't have to be this way. I am going to... Oh, maybe Pop's Custom Clips over on Etsy makes one for this. Or maybe he would make one for me. Something to look into, and I will. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons just for fun. Go ahead and get that lined up. That's a really big knife. Let's see. Well, okay. Here it is against the Bad Monkey. It was just on the table. As you can see, the Bad Monkey is just a little bit bigger, but this is a very big knife. Here it is against the full-size grip. And as you can see, the Pallas. I'm going to go with Pallas. If I'm saying it wrong, I'm sure you'll correct me. That happens a lot. The Pallas is, well, considerably bigger. If we actually line it up on the same tip, it's almost 3/4 of an inch longer than a full-size grip. Here it is against the 943 from the nice folks at Benchmade. And here it is against the Bug Out. And as you can see, it's just a big knife. Do I have anything this big on the table other than that? Not quite the same, but here's against the Petrified Fish Beluga, which is also a big knife. And as you can see, right, I mean, it's just a big boy. Now, the button lock on this is, of course, one of its sort of key features, something that people are really into, and I'm no different. I do like a good button lock. I have to say, I've got a bunch of various button locks from various companies. I think this is probably my favorite in a long time. It's partially, so there's a bit of milling to get it down into the aluminum a little bit. It has no stick, but it definitely has enough spring so you don't feel like you can do it by accident. But the minute you get it past that point, the blade, because of how thick, I mean, it's a thick piece of S35VN, and we'll get to that in just a second because it's worth talking about. It just drops home, right? Thumb studs work, and then you can do it this way. I mean, anyway, it's really well done. And I think that's very cool. As you can see, the alumina is milled out to give your thumb like a lift-off spot on. So if you're lefty, it would work too. But unfortunately, you cannot flip this clip. But just the same, I wonder if I can flick it. Yeah, you can. So you get your finger sort of up in there and then pop it open. That's really nice. All right, let's talk about the blade. So tantos are sort of a notoriously aggressive style of blade, designed for a little extra toughness and thickness. They're also kind of a pain in the butt to keep sharp because of you get the tip here and a secondary tip down here. But that does make them really good for working close to the table because you've got this nice tip right here, like a secondary, smaller version of that, which is nice. This is a relatively thick slice of S35VN, but what I want to talk about is the way the spine on this thing is crowned. It is like buttery soft along these edges. Even back here where the jimping is, where your thumb sort of lands. These are a little more aggressive, but not bad. This really feels like somebody put a lot of thought and energy into it. Now, this one was used, and I can tell you, not only is it used, but somebody sharpened it before I got a hold of it. And I know that because it had a rolled edge. When you sharpen a knife, you get down to it, so you get that little bit of curl, and then you're supposed to basically buff that off. But this has definitely got, you can hear it that way. It's smoother this way. So we'll have to do some sharpening. It's got a nice sharpening choil at the base of the plunge. The thumb studs are mostly out of the path of cutting, which is a nice feature. This one has a few marks on some of the sharp spots, like here. But other than that, it's essentially new. There is a little bit of some stuff on the blade. The stonewash on this is interesting. I like a good stonewash on my knives. I'm not a huge high polish guy, but the way they did this is it looks dirty kind of all the time, which is cool if it's a user. But I keep finding myself wanting to clean the blade because of the way they did the stone washing. Oh, it's dirty. No, it's just the way it looks. This thing is cool. Let's go ahead and weigh it out. Now, again, you can't find this tanto, but the new S45VN version of this in the drop point, which is no less cool, is out there, and I will post a link to that in the description. So if you want to check that out, you can. Of course, I got this from my buddy Chris. I will say there's a little bit of a scratch right there. And I got to tell you, the blade right there is awfully close to the... Can you see that right there? Can I touch it? I can't, but it's close. That's interesting. I wonder... It's a little bit rounded off down here, and I'm starting to wonder if that's because it used to maybe poke up a bit right there. Anyway, I like that there's no lock, by the way. I think it's really nice. Let's go ahead and weigh it out. I could just ramble on about how cool I think this thing is for a long time. Wouldn't do you any good. All right. So 4.9 ounces for almost 9-inch knife is not bad. You're going to know it's there, but it feels substantial instead of heavy. I don't know how else to say that. Like the Beluga here is 5.5 ounces, right? So the Beluga is heavier than the Pallas. That's because this is steel and G10 and this is aluminum. I get that. But this feels heavy. It always has. It is a very comfortable knife in hand, but it's got almost kind of a brick feel to it. The Pallas, on the other hand, coming in very similar weight, feels almost nimble. Like you can move it around really comfortably. Part of that is that it's sort of front heavy, right? You got to move your hand. I don't know, actually, that's really well done. The balance point is right here, basically right where you want it to be. That's okay. Folks at Spartan, once again, showing that they know exactly what they're doing. Before we go, let's figure out exactly how wide this little slice of blade is. How thick it is, excuse me. Way back here at the thickest, almost 4 millimeters, 3.82 millimeters, which is not bad. The handle itself at its thickest is 13.24, which is, yeah, just a hair over a ½ inch. Yeah. And this way, since we're doing that anyway, yeah, we're coming in at just over an inch. So it's a really nice ergonomic setup. Feels good in the hand. I feel like even if you had smaller hands than mine, it would still be comfortable because of the way it's shaped. Maybe down the road, Women Carry Knives will review this knife and she'll have her own thoughts and she may disagree with me, but we'll all find out together. And that's where we're going to leave it. This is the Spartan Pallas, P-A-L-L-A-S. I'm going to call it the Pallas again because that's just what sounds right in my head. A fully made in the USA knife in aluminum and S35VN. Running on bearings, it is very cool, and I'm happy to have one in the collection. If you have any questions, feel free to ask down below. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.